Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Meoni and you're watching the Clismcast. Today I'm starting a brand new series, one that I have been looking forward to actually recording and uploading for a long time now. I'm taking a little bit of a break from the Warcraft content. I'm going to give you some of this stuff. Now this is Kerbal Space Program. If you've never heard of this game, then you haven't lived. It's essentially like Spore and a science experiment mixed with Minecraft and just ingenious creationist outlets of awesomeness, alright? So this really is up my street. I love sandbox games, and this is currently in alpha, would you believe it? This game is fantastic for an alpha. A lot of people have already made some fantastic YouTube videos on those internets, and I can only be foreshadowed by them. But I'm going to give it a go, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to create. Hopefully, in this series, we're going to explore the entire solar system revolving around Kerbin and our little Kerbals. So we're going to explore places, we're going to learn how to dock, I'm going to show you how to create rockets, we're going to take those rockets to the very end of the solar system and back again. We're going to talk about a few failures. Oh, it's going to be epic. Let's start it. So you may see a few buildings here. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this, you start off very simply with these 4 buildings. This one over here is where you launch your rockets. This one here with the radar dish is where you track your rockets or space projects or anything that's launched. And over here we have the vertical assembly building where we create our rockets. And over here the space plane hangar where we create space planes, funnily enough. So we've got a lot to do. So in this mission, my primary mission today will be to try and create a space station, and in doing so to try and get it up there into orbit. So as you can tell, I'm a bit of a sci-fi nerd, so my first instinct is to look at Deep Space Nine pictures and Star Trek in general pictures of space stations, but in reality we're going to go for something a little bit more like the ISS, he says, thinking it'll be easier. So we've got a picture here of the ISS off of Google, and this is really what I'm going to base my space station off. So let's go over to the VAB and try and make this thing. So whilst I was looking at that picture of the ISS, essentially what I was thinking was the length of the damn thing and how I'm actually going to get something of that size up there. Now I've played this game for a few hours, about 70 or something, not a lot really in the grand scheme of things for a game of this scale and depth. But I know one thing, and it's that it's going to take an absolute truckload of rockets to get something up there of that size in one go. So the simple solution is to take it up in bits, as few bits as possible, into separate rockets. So obviously we don't have much to dock together, but obviously we need to cut that down. So as I can see, we're going to need really about 3 pieces. One of them is kind of fairly simple. Like we have to build 2 identical pieces for each end, which will be the solar arrays, okay, which will be the sides of the ship. But the first thing that we need to create is a command module and living quarters. So we need a straight line of metal, basically, with cabins and various places for people to live and all that stuff. And this will be fairly simple to create, actually. So all I've done now is I've made a basic launcher here and created something which has a nuclear engine actually and this large fuel tank to maneuver it into an orbit sort of area with RCS tanks at the top and an advanced SAS. It's got 3 docking ports on this module. We have 2 on the left and right side of the ship here on the sort of hitchhiker bay, I think it's called. Which is the auxiliary area, a place where Kerbals won't be sat in for launch, like a living quarters, and then above then we have the main cabin where people will be piloting from. And at the top we have our main docking port. Now in retrospect I think I might need another one of these above, obviously, so I'm creating the main core of this. So it's going to have lots of offshoots on the next rocket after this one. But let's focus on getting this up there and into an orbit without complicating things too much already. The keen-eyed and veteran players here watching this video may notice I'm using MechJeb for this launch and all the productions on this video series. The reason for that is I suck at rendezvous, I suck at docking, and also I want to test out the next generation of the pre-release of MechJeb 2.0, which I'm using here today. Basically, if you're not familiar with MechJeb, it allows for automated flight, takeoff, rendezvous, and all that. Basically, I like creating things, and I don't like messing things up because I'm inept at controlling a craft with the arrow keys. So this makes it a little bit easier for me, but believe me, the tension is still there, and anything could happen. After all, this is a space program, not, a car driving game. However, rest assured I will be using manual controls for a few projects in the future when I get a little bit more, let's say, experienced with them. So without further ado, I'm just finishing up the staging so that the rocket doesn't tear itself apart with gantry, launching its separate stages. So obviously staging, you want everything to go off in order from the bottom all the way to the top. Now the bottom stage is first, the top stage is last. That's how it works. So all this gantry wants to be released at the same time as the three rockets launch. These two solid rocket boosters on the side here, and the big orange tank rocket needs to be launched at the same time, this mainsail, so that we have a chance of actually getting into orbit at all. After these stages are completely out of fuel, the rocket boosters will be detached via these radial decouplers, and then when the main orange tank is also out of fuel, that will be detached, and then comes out the nuclear rocket, and that will be providing us the thrust to basically move us into the final ascent stages of a static orbit of 100 kilometers above Kerbin. Now, before we launch this, I've made a few sort of adjustments in my mind, and I want to make them a reality. I honestly don't think there's enough thrust with the big orange down there and the two boosters to actually get me into a sort of thrust, sort of velocity to actually escape into an orbit. And this single nuclear rocket isn't going to provide me anywhere near as much thrust as I need to get into that orbit on the last stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overcompensate a little bit by putting on two of these rockets here, these two liquid fuel tanks on the side with two big engines. This will provide me with the final thrust I need, and then we can use a nuclear rocket to provide any, slight adjustments that we'll need in the future to the overall project. We should be about ready for a launch now with these adjustments, and I'm fairly quietly confident, to be honest. So there's not really much left to do than get it on the launch pad and give it a go. So today we are joined by Herger Kerman and Scott Kerman, probably a relation of Scott Manley. His fantastic videos have definitely influenced the creation of this one, so he's probably popped by to give us our first real taste of interstellar travel. So I'm gonna shut up and let's enjoy this moment. I'll see you on the other side.
This is ground control. We have T-minus 35 seconds and counting. Favorable weather, clear skies. We're looking for a good launch. Over. Sure, we're good for go. Over.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff! We have liftoff, the first of many rockets to see the stars above.
So there she goes, Ares 1, on her way into space. Unfortunately, if we speed up a little bit, this was a failed attempt. Unfortunately, the lives of the crew on board don't last too long. I forgot to put any parachute stuff as a contingency in this ship, and unfortunately we did actually not have enough fuel to get there on the first attempt. After all of my effort, I was right though, there is not enough fuel or thrust on board to take this up. I'm going to have to revise my plan somewhat, but I am determined by the time this episode is finished I will have that up there. So let's skip on until I actually get a successful launch and a successful ship, and we'll go from there. I'm afraid we do have to give our condolences to Scott and his friend that I can't remember the name of, who was in that first test pilot of the Ares 1. Their names and their spirits will live on in my next creations. But good news, we have a new pilot. His name's Bill Kerman, and he will be piloting our new project. And this one will get up there, and this is the more successful attempt. So instead of building vertically, I decided to build outwards, horizontally, with two big boosters over here instead of the single rocket boosters, and keeping the fuel cells as well on here, on the inner side here. All four of these engines will be burning at the same time, and because they're closer together, there's less drag, there's a lot more thrust to the center of mass, so it's going to be a lot easier to get up there. And like I say, this was significantly more successful, so let's see how the Ares 2 gets into orbit. So here we are, we're going up to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 meters here. At this stage we make a 45-degree gravity turn, so our ship is now 45 degrees inclination. At 10,000 meters we will be making another gravity turn here shortly, now to a 90-degree gravity turn there. And that's literally how you will get into an orbit. You have to make those two gravity turns. Little tip for anyone there who's wanting to do this manually: it's 45 degrees at 5,000 meters, and 10,000 meters equals a 90-degree turn. So here we are. We're actually using a very small rocket here on this final stage, but this is all we really need to get in that 100-kilometer orbit. It's going to be close though. I probably should have put on the larger rocket here, the LV-45 I think it is, the larger version of this. But we're going to be pushing this apoapsis all the way out, hopefully, so we can get an orbit. And then we're going to let MechJeb circularize this. But it's looking okay. The only problem is it's a bit nerve-wracking, because obviously we're actually catching up to our apoaps here, and the closer we get to that, the less chance we have. So I'm just sort of praying here that we have enough thrust, enough delta V to be able to put us into an orbit. It's looking very, very close, and that apoapse is not too far away, and we are actually catching up on that. A few seconds, look. So the closer we get to that, the less chances we have. But miraculously, once we get there, within 8 seconds of actually meeting it, it starts going back up again. And it's at this point we realize we are actually in an orbit, and all MechJeb's going to do now is wait until we are at the periaps, well actually at the apoaps on the other side of the planet, and burn the periaps out by burning away from the planet, which will extend that periaps out into a circularized orbit and a static orbit that won't decay. So there we go, we have our first ship in orbit around Kerbin. This has been a mission success, apart from the fact we had to get through 2 ships to get up here. The memories of Scott Kerman will live on for a very long time. He provided us with enough leverage and enough testing to get us here on Ares 2. But Bill's up here with Jebediah, and that's about it for this episode. Next time we will be getting up the solar arrays. The next stage, we're going to make a really nice big station here, and we're also going to make it a refueling station for an upcoming project where we go to the moon. So for more like this, be sure to subscribe to the Clismcast today. I'm going to intend to do this weekly as often as I can. Thank you very much for watching my video, and I'll see you next time.